Twice a year, millions of us go through a familiar ritual. We spring forward, losing an hour of sleep, then we fall back, plunging our evenings into darkness. It's a collective temporal shift that leaves many of us feeling groggy and out of sync for days. We complain about it, we forget to change a clock or two, and we carry on. But have you ever stopped to seriously ask, why do we still do this? Why do entire countries manipulate time? The answer is a fascinating and complex story that begins with a common myth. Contrary to popular belief, daylight saving time was not created for farmers. In fact, when it was introduced, many farmers were staunchly against it, arguing that their schedules were dictated by the sun, not by a clock on the wall, and the change disrupted their work. The idea itself had been floating around for a while. Benjamin Franklin mused about it in a satirical essay in 1784. Later, a New Zealand scientist named George Hudson proposed a 2-hour shift in 1895 so he'd have more daylight after work to collect insects. But the person who really pushed the concept was a British builder named William Willett, who was frustrated by what he called the waste of daylight on summer mornings. Despite their efforts, the idea never gained real traction until the world went to war. In 1916, 2 years into World War I, Germany became the first country to officially adopt daylight saving time. Their reasoning was brutally practical: to conserve coal and fuel for the war effort by minimizing the use of artificial lighting. The UK, the United States, and other warring nations quickly followed suit. This wartime measure, designed for energy conservation, was the true birth of the time change we know today. In the US, it was even temporarily nicknamed wartime. After the wars, the practice became a chaotic patchwork. Some countries dropped it, others kept it. In the United States, it was a free-for-all, with states and even individual cities deciding when or if to change their clocks, leading to what was called chronological chaos for industries like transportation and broadcasting. This confusion eventually led to the Uniform Time Act of 1966 in the U.S., which standardized the practice across the nation, though it still allowed states to opt out. So the original reason was to save energy. But does it actually work? The debate is fierce. The initial logic was that shifting an hour of daylight from the morning to the evening would reduce the need for electric lighting. However, modern studies have cast serious doubt on this claim. Research suggests that in today's world, any savings on lighting are often canceled out by increased use of air conditioning in the hotter, longer evenings and heating on the darker, colder mornings. In fact, some analyses show the net energy saving is negligible, less than 1%, or in some cases, non-existent. If energy saving is a bust, what's the modern justification? Proponents argue it's about lifestyle. That extra hour of evening daylight in the summer is good for the economy, encouraging people to go out shopping, eat at restaurants, and engage in outdoor recreational activities and tourism. Yet, fewer than 40% of the world's countries currently change their clocks. The practice is mainly concentrated in Europe and North America. For nations near the equator, it's pointless. Their length of day barely changes throughout the year. And even within countries that observe it, there are exceptions. In the United States, for example, Hawaii and most of Arizona stick to standard time year-round. Over the last decade, the conversation has shifted dramatically. Scientists and medical experts have begun to issue stark warnings about the dark side of changing our clocks. The problem isn't just the inconvenience, it's a serious public health issue. Our bodies operate on an internal 24-hour clock, the circadian rhythm, which is naturally synchronized by light and darkness. When we abruptly shift the clocks by an hour, we throw that finely tuned system into disarray. It's not just losing an hour of sleep in the spring. It's a forced misalignment of our entire biology with the social clock, a phenomenon researchers call social jet lag. The consequences are not trivial. Studies have shown a significant spike in heart attacks on the Monday following the spring forward change. In one study, they found a 25% increase. There's also a documented rise in strokes and hospital admissions. Our safety on the roads is also compromised. A 2020 study found that fatal traffic accidents in the U.S. jump by 6% in the week after we lose that hour of sleep. The cumulative effect of a sleep-deprived population trying to get to work in darker mornings is a recipe for disaster. Furthermore, the disruption has been linked to a range of mental health issues, including worsening mood disorders, depression, and anxiety. This growing body of evidence has fueled a movement to end the biennial clock change. But that raises another question. If we stop changing the clocks, which time should we choose? Permanent standard time, which we use in the winter, or permanent daylight saving time, which we use in the summer? Proponents of permanent daylight saving time argue for those longer summer-like evenings all year round. In fact, the U.S. Senate passed a bill called the Sunshine Protection Act to make DST permanent, though it has stalled. However, virtually every major scientific body that studies sleep and circadian rhythms strongly disagrees. They warn that permanent DST is the worst possible choice. It would mean our social clocks would be permanently out of sync with our body clocks. This would result in dangerously dark mornings for much of the year, forcing children to wait for school buses in the pitch black and making morning commutes even riskier. These experts argue overwhelmingly for permanent standard time, as it more closely aligns with the natural cycle of the sun and therefore with our own biology. So here we are, caught in a century-old habit, a practice born from the crisis of war whose original benefits have all but evaporated in the modern world. We are now left with a system that is, at best, an inconvenience, and at worst, a measurable threat to our health and safety. The question is no longer just why do we change the time, but for how much longer will we continue to let this twice-yearly ritual disrupt our lives?